The first time I actually saw Mary Magdalene in semi-physical form, and she is my guardian angel, um, was when I was taking a deep breathing workshop at the Mission San Luis Rey in Oceanside, California. That's one of the original California missions. And actually, it's known as the mission of Mary, Mother Mary. Has a beautiful statue of her in the courtyard there. And it's actually was the second time I saw Mother Mary in semi-physical form. But I want to talk about Mary Magdalene because she's my primary guardian angel. And it was during this workshop that she and Mary came through the door. And now I'm going to use words that don't really describe what I saw because we don't have the syntax for that. But, take some liberty in your interpretation of some of the words that I use. But anyway, they came through the door and they rushed up to me. They were both wearing long black capes, and which I didn't understand at the time, but later Maggie, who I call Mary Magdalene Maggie, at a later time Maggie explained what those were symbolic of. But anyway, they came to the door with these flying with these long black capes, and they just began circling me and wrapping me in these capes and giggling, just having fun with me. And the facilitator of the workshop, we were sitting in chairs at the time. The facilitator said, "Okay, everybody to the floor." Now, just before the facilitator said that, Mary, Mother Mary, when I say Mary, I'm referring to Mother Mary. When I say Maggie, I'm referring to Mary Magdalene. But Mary said, "I want you to go to the floor." And of course, I would be the only one on the floor, so I hesitated, and then immediately the facilitator said, "Okay, everyone to the floor." So we laid down on the floor, and this was about 8 o'clock in the morning, so it was nice and bright in the room. And I was laying on my back with my head in Mary's lap, and Maggie was floating above me. And Maggie came into me, and at that time when she came into me, she healed me, not completely because I had some other work to do with this, but she healed me to a great extent of my childhood molestations. And now I was in my 40s at the time, and I had never spoken to anybody about these molestations, let alone write about them. But anyway, she was in my body, and she healed me of these molestations. She came back out. She was hovering above me, and she just spent time hovering above me, and with my head in Mary's lap. And Mary was caressing my head with her hand. And then, I lost all track of time. Mary said, "We have to go." And they got up and they left. And, my ego, my ego is saying, golly, they didn't even say goodbye. And as soon as I thought that, Maggie put her head through the door, like looking around the corner, gets this great big smile on her face, and she comes up in front of me, and she takes my face in her hands like this, and she gives me just a peck on the lips. And she looks at me, cocks her head a little bit, looks at me with a smile, and she says, "You silly boy." and she's gone. And that was the very first time. Now, I say she healed me. Mary was healing me also. But from that point on, I was able to openly and freely discuss my molestations with people, and I began writing about them. So that was a big breakthrough. And of course, people who have been traumatized, they'll tell you that a major part of the healing is when you begin to talk about it. And in my case, I also began writing about it. And so from that time on, now at that time I didn't call Mary Magdalene Maggie. I wasn't on that close of terms with her. But then over the years, she stayed in contact with me, and then in December of 2012, she woke me up around 2 a.m. in the morning and had me sit at my desk, and she began conveying what we now call love notes for your soul. At that time, we were just calling them poems, and then love notes for Maggie, and then that evolved in love notes for your soul. And it's not automatic writing, but it's close to it. But anyway, it was during that initial time where I began receiving these love notes that she asked if she could call me Joseph, and sure, what am I going to say, right? And then, so I said, do you mind if I call you Maggie? And I've always loved the name Maggie. And she said, sure. So in December 2012, she started calling me Joseph. I started referring to her as Maggie. And of course, there's more to the story, and that's in some of the books I've written. But I'll be making more videos to go into more detail about this. And this ties into, when we start on our path, when we start following our bliss, doubts and fears arise. And they certainly did with this. I certainly had my doubts many times over the first few years, doubting that these love notes were really coming from Mary Magdalene. And she made it very clear to me in the signs that she sent to me that these are indeed coming from her. And anyway, I'll get into that in later videos, but you can also go to my website, jmmlove.com. I have free interview. You can listen to these free. There are interviews on my website where I go into details about these doubts and fears and the signs she sent me. So